phones off. I forgot to tell you about that. If you have them on, get me.
Thank you. Yeah, when I was kind of thinking about what I was going to say today, so I went back and looked at the email that Dawn sends out on Wednesday, and I'm reading the description, and I'm like, wow, what a lovely description she wrote. And I'm like, yeah, I think I might have written that, and she cut and pasted it. Interesting experience. So I'll give you just a little bit of a background. I'm also a coach. I help people really work on their inner game of life, mastering the inner game of life through coaching. And I found this group in 2010 that I started following. It's called the Three Principles, and the Three Principles are mind, thought, and consciousness. And it's based on the work of a welder who had an enlightenment experience in 1976. His name was Sydney Banks. And he just started talking about his experience. And all these psychologists, like, this guy's really onto something. He lives in Salt Spring Island. And so I started studying with two of his students.
Where is Salt Spring?
It's off the coast of British Columbia, I think north of Vancouver. I'm not exactly sure. So I started studying two of his students, and I was liking everything that I was learning from them, and I was implementing that into my practice and everything. And then I wrote a book, and I published the book in 2016. And then I started getting some of Sid's stuff. I found out that there's this whole treasure trove of stuff that he had written and videotape. It's old videotape. It's VHS quality, but it's out there and pretty cool. And I'm like, well, what these guys are teaching is nothing what he is teaching. And to me, it kind of seemed like, one of the things that we love about Adam is it's anti-dogma. And, dogma can become a thing, and all of a sudden there's lots of rules. But the followers kind of need that to create a structure so they can do that. And I'm like, that's what happened with Sid. So I really started delving into some of his stuff. And I was in a relationship at the time that was coming to an end. We had been together for about 6 or 7 years, and it was becoming apparent that it really wasn't working anymore. And I had packed and was ready to leave. The girl that I was with had her birthday weekend, and she went off on a girls' weekend with a bunch of her girlfriends to, party hard. And that was an opportunity for me to do this thing called a Maha meditation, which is in the TM community, kind of deep in the bowels of Reddit. You can find it if you're interested in doing research on it. But it's basically a 72-hour meditation where you wake up morning 1 and begin meditating, and meditate non-stop. You can stop to do yoga, and you can have some of your meditation be walking meditation, but you're supposed to meditate for 72 hours. And only drinking water, getting up to go to the bathroom, obviously, but I did that, and I didn't make it all 72 hours, but I made it like 67, and I had a couple of naps on the way, and it wasn't like I decided to take a nap. My body decided for me, and they were short, but it was a very interesting and profound experience. And what I feel like in retrospect may have happened was all of this stuff that I had been studying with Sydney just became embodied. It wasn't that I had, the book that I wrote was like a good intellectual understanding of these teachings, of his teachings in my voice. And I look back at that book and I thought, boy, what I wrote was good, but that's not what he was talking about, because now I was kind of seeing what it was that he was talking about. And I'd already been meditating at the time I started in 88, and this was in 5 years ago. So whatever the math is on that, a long time. I'd been meditating for a long time. And that changed dramatically. That ended the relationship because when my girlfriend came back into town, I was so lit, and I was probably delirious. I'm certain that I probably was. And I thought, through these insights, if she could just understand these insights, this is exactly. And the bad thing is, I kind of knew that. That wasn't my first rodeo, but that's what it was. And she's like, this seems like a really good time for you to just take all of that stuff that you've packed and call the moving company. And so that's what happened. And but that sent me on an interesting journey. I moved back from Tampa to Cocoa Beach, and I had a little condo on the beach, and that was really cool. And I used to walk the beach twice a day. So on a typical week, I might be on the beach meditating 3 or 4 times a week as the sun rose. And so just like my inner dialogue was just spinning down, and my ability to hear the whispers of wisdom felt like it was going up. And I kind of thought I was the bomb, you know, that I had it all sort of figured out. And then in November, I go to the bathroom one day, and there's blood in my urine, and a blood clot the size of a quarter. And I've had bladder cancer before. This is actually my 4th time with it. And man, my world was thrown into a friggin' tailspin. Not only did my inner dialogue come back, and in the Sydney world, there is a philosophy that the source of all of our physical, mental, and emotional distress is at its root caused by chronic mental stress. That we've just got so much stuff going on in our cone all the time that if we can't deal with it and we can't get it down, then we end up having to have manifestations. You know, for some people it's physical, other people it's emotional, some people it's mental, and that curing that. And this is now a school of philosophy because one of his other followers is a very prominent psychiatrist, and that's what he teaches now: one cause, one cure. You know, get in touch with your chronic mental stress. And man, I was having chronic mental stress. My friend Carla was in town at the time. I see the blood, and I think, I'm not going to tell her because it'll freak her out. And like I did thought that for about 30 seconds, but and then I went out, and she saw the look on my face and immediately goes, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I have blood in my urine." And she's like, "Oh God," you know. So we kind of knew what was going on. I go into the little walk in the box, dock in a box thing that afternoon. You know, I got right in, and they took my blood pressure. My blood pressure was 197 over 116. And I don't have high blood pressure. I never have had high blood pressure. And I saw that, and I'm like, should I be here or the emergency room? And the lady, she was very nice, and she put her hand down on my knee, and she said, "I think you're fine. You're okay. This is white coat syndrome, and under the circumstances, completely to be expected." So, man, mental static is just blah, 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 blah. And I got to get in to see the doctor. And she managed to get me in, like, not the next day, but I think the day after that, it may have been the 3rd day, to get an appointment. And like everybody at the urology place was surprised. How'd you get it? You set an appointment 3 days ago and you're here? And I'm like, well, yeah. And she must have been very, very persuasive to get me in there. So I start working with the doctor. I had to get an MRI or CAT scan, I can't remember which, but you know, just to check and see what they could see. Then I have a follow-up appointment with the doctor, and I'm like, oh God, let it be not too bad, let it not be too far along. And I show up, the doctor's got 2 offices, one near Regional and another one off of Piper or Providence or wherever, but 2 offices. And I show up to the wrong one. And I'm speaking at Joshua's meditation class later that afternoon. And I told Josh, I said, I got a doctor's appointment this morning. I don't know how I'm going to be when I get out of there. So just to let you know. So I show up and they're like, oh, you're at the wrong place. You're supposed to be at Piper or whatever. And I say, okay, well, where's that? And they're like, let me call over to the doctor. The doctor says to me, he goes, we'll schedule it. When's the last time you had it scoped? I've looked at the CT scan, you're fine. I don't see anything on there that's causing me any concern at all. And that just was like a giant relief. Turned out to be false. But in the moment, it was like a relief. And I went and I was at Josh's thing and, did the presentation, and he goes, I guess your doctor's appointment went well. And I said, yeah. And I'd already started thinking about one of the things that Sydney teaches and a lot of other people teach is we perceive that our emotions are telling us about our circumstances. And I was high as a kite when I went into Josh's thing, because I just had this amazing sense of relief. So, I talked to his students and that was pretty cool. But in reality, are our emotions telling us about our circumstances? And it doesn't take too much inquiry to figure out that that's not true. You can just imagine being a regular commuter who is traveling down the same road in the same car with more or less the same people each and every day. And some days you're full of bliss. And, if there's a traffic jam, no problem. I'm enjoying this book on tape or whatever I'm listening to, or listening to this piece of music. And you're totally blissed out. And other days, same car, same road, same people, more or less. Somebody cuts you off, you might pull a gun out of the glove box and blow a tire out. Road rage. And so what has changed? The only thing that has really changed is our perception of what's going on in the world and the interaction that we're having with it. And the tricks our critical mind, our rational mind, plays on us with wanting to wrap our head around everything. But there I was, and I kind of thought about that later. I'm like, I still had a follow-up appointment with him, because if you're a bladder cancer survivor, you're supposed to get scoped periodically. I had gotten to the point where I was only getting scoped 5 years, and I was overdue. So he's like, we might as well go ahead and do that. So I go in, that was on Thursday, I go in the next Tuesday, and he's got a big flat screen TV, and to check, they snake a tube up Bobby Jr., and they're looking around my bladder, sorry, oversharing me.
No one needed to know where.
And we go in there, and he's looking around, he goes, oh, this looks good, this looks good. Yeah, this is beautiful tissue. Yeah, you're fine. That's what he was saying. And then it was like we went over like a little ridge and tumors. Boom. And I'm like, oh, F-bomb. That's not good, is it? And he goes, no, that's not good. And there was a big one. And he was trying to get under it to see the stalk, because bladder cancer tumors grow like a mushroom. And so the cap was pretty big, but that didn't really tell him anything. He needs to see like it's the stalk, a big strong, like a boleta mushroom, or not. And he couldn't get underneath there. He didn't know, and he tried, and I could feel him moving it around. And he's like, I just can't tell, but we'll get you in as quick as we can, and we'll get it out and, begin protocols and do the biopsy and all of that stuff. So that was like early to mid-November. The first time they can get me in is January the 4th. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like livid and my head static was going bananas. And, it was very hard to work. I mean, it was hard to coach people when they're like, my life is so rough. And I'm like, I've got cancer. I was not in a very helpful and empowered state at that point in mind, and just the weight going so long, and just I was out of control, and finally my friend Carla and I decided we just need to get out of here. So we went to Arizona to this little town called Hereford, which is 2 miles north of the Mexican border, and nothing's there. All we did was climb canyons, stalk wildlife, eat pies and drink tea at night, and it was blissful. There were no people around. I got up and I started meditating, and I'm like, oh man, this is what I need. And the physical exertion was very helpful. That's an excellent tool to remove stress for people. And I'm hiking these canyons, and at one point I get up to this peak, and it was beautiful. There's this great overlook, and there's like 14 people there, and Carla couldn't make it, or she's like, I've just got to stop. And I said, okay, I want to get to the top. So I go up to the top, and it's spectacular view, and but I'm huffing and puffing, and I'm like, geez, I'm out of shape. I feel like I'm gasping for air. And one of the people goes, dude, you're over 9,000 feet. There is no air. But that was the perfect thing for me in that moment. And it took me out of these loops, that we get into patterns, mental patterns that just run over and over again. And we've all experienced, we've all got triggers that one thing can happen and it's just like, boom, we go from 0 to 99 in no time flat. And so that broke my pattern that I had been running. I got the thing coming up on January the 7th. Paula had taken time off. She was still going to be there to kind of nurse me through the first couple of days, which are pretty tough. And so I go back and I'm getting ready for that, and everything's good. I'm feeling great. Everything's fine. Wednesday, I have to go in for a COVID test. And I tested positive for COVID. And I was pissed because now it's going to be February the 4th. And I got the sense that something was wrong because they told me at the place that they would have the results that afternoon. And I didn't hear from them that afternoon. I called and left a message on Thursday and, with a receptionist or whatever. I said, I haven't heard back. And she goes, oh, I'll have somebody get back to you. Friday morning, I still haven't heard. And finally, they called me and they said, you've tested positive. We've got to reschedule the surgery. We can't go today. And I was telling them it was impossible, which wasn't true. But in my memory, and I didn't admit that I had traveled, and
Why would he?
why would I could see no reason for it. Didn't make any sense at all to share that info.
You need to know basis.
But as this is going on, now I've got, when I got the diagnosis, I sent out emails and I posted it on Facebook because in my past, I've always been kind of like, when things are going wrong, suffer in silence and don't spread your pain. Nobody cares about your misery and blah, blah, blah. And that was just conditioning from my dad being in the Air Force, and he's like, straighten up and float right. And so then I'm talking to people and having conversations, and I said, it's impossible that I have COVID. I've had no symptoms. And at one point, Carla comes and goes, you ran a fever on Sunday and Monday. You have symptoms. Why do you keep telling people you have no symptoms? I get why you told the doctor, because that was kind of stupid, but she understood that. And I'm like, wow, I really got caught up in that story. And I got so caught up in that story that that story had kind of become true. And then, Carla's there for the next couple of days, and then she flies back to Dillingham. And she goes, are you going to be okay? And I said, I have no idea. And so we went to see, and I thought, I need to get back to that space that I was in, before all of this happened and before Arizona, or like in Arizona. And so I just started getting quiet. And I realized when I was telling that story, there's an interesting philosopher called Wei Wu Wei. And a lot of you may have heard of him. You Google him. He's very good at little snippets. He's a very meme-friendly person. And one of his phrases is, the reason that you're unhappy is because you spend 99.99% of the time reinforcing your story, and you've made that all up. And that kind of hit me, and I'm like, okay, I gotta stop telling the story. I gotta get centered. And an amazing thing happened. Everybody, because I was so public about it, and people were checking in, and very kind and very loving and very compassionate. People were asking, how are you doing? Are you in any pain? And the truth of the matter was, I was in a lot of mental distress, but physically, other than the blood, I had, no symptoms. I had no pain at all. And so I'm like, I need to just stop telling this story. And all of a sudden, people started asking me to tell them their story. I didn't ask them that, but like folks here, people were checking in with me once or twice a week, and it just went silent. And I thought, that's pretty cool. And then I just started adding things to my routine. And so I went on a soft, silent retreat, meaning that, like once a day I would return text messages and emails and phone calls. But like my voicemail message said, I'm practicing silence for a little bit of time. I'm checking messages. I'll call you back at 6 o'clock. And that was the time that I was calling people back. And I just started adding stuff. And things got very quieter and more quiet than they had been previously. And one of the things that happened that was kind of interesting with my broadcasting, like everybody here and everybody in my spiritual community and most everybody that I know was just so kind and so loving. Oh, gosh. And, but there were some haters that were out there. Because one of the things that I am kind of known for a little bit, and I post a lot, and I have a lot of memes, and I'll make comments on people's posts, is life only ever unfolds one way, divinely.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Hallelujah. It only ever unflows divinely. And I had people, like I think more than a dozen, although I never really counted, that would send me like little snarky messages saying, how's the journey with divine cancer? And that was the worst one. And other people were just asking.
It's 6 hours.
You know, are you still adhering to your life unfolds divinely? And when they were asking those questions, I wasn't. You know, I was in my head. I was rationalizing. I had this, you know, my inner critic was like, you drink too much coffee, you drink too much soda, you know, that's why, and, you know, just like, and it was worse than I had, you know, just like incessant. And so getting those messages in that mental state, you know, I wasn't like in a grounded and centered and aligned and loving place, and I didn't really engage them. But the one person, I wrote back, "Fuck you," and I immediately blocked them. And with the other people, I'm just like, I don't need this right now, so I just blocked them. I didn't say anything; they were just gone. And they weren't friends. I mean, you know, they were people like that knew me from Facebook, but you know, we all have Facebook friends that we don't really know all that well. And this was these folks that were doing that. So, you know, I kind of had gotten back to the place of where is the divinity in what is unfolding here. And I didn't try to answer that. I just kept asking the question, where's the divinity in how this life is unfolding? And I got deeper and deeper into the silence. And at the end of it, my typical day was, I woke up in, you know, we wake up in kind of a hypnotic state. It takes a little while for our mind to come online. It's either, you know, Phil, hypnagogic or hypnopompic. I forget. I never can keep the two. One or the other. One's when you're going offline, the other one's when you're coming online. And those are wonderful times to do, like if you're listening to suggestion type tapes, you know, first thing in the morning and last thing at night. As your mind's going off, you're very receptive to messages. So my first thing that I did in the morning when I woke up was extend that period as long as I could. And I got to the point where I was like laying in bed, just kind of floating in this trancy haze for almost an hour. And then I'd get up and go to the bathroom and I would stretch, and then I would do a meditation. And I would do like an hour meditation. And after that, I did yoga and just stretch and relax, and that's very meditative. And after that, I did Reiki. I'm a Reiki practitioner. And so I gave myself Reiki treatments every day. And then I went on a walk, and then I came back and I meditated again. And then I read. And the only thing that I was reading, I was not on my phone. I was not listening to any news or sports or anything. If I did listen to anything at all, it was like, I don't know if you guys know these names or not, Sadhguru and Mooji and Rupert Spira and Francis Lucille, you know, the very, very spiritually oriented stuff in line with this, you know, we are all one. And the goal of life is recognize that everything is union, that this is the truth that's happening right now. And, you know, Buddha taught that the source of our suffering is that we want to cling to everything that's going on. You know, we'll have outcomes that if we don't get that outcome, or if things aren't going our way, you know, we can get very frustrated with. And, you know, I get into those. If you look at my Facebook posts, you can see I'll be spiritual, love, bliss, wonderful, everything. And then I'm like, these damn politicians in Washington rather spending money we don't have. It's like, okay, Bobby's not very grounded right now. And so, I was doing too much of that, and I'm just like, that's got to stop. And so I just kept getting, deeper and deeper into that. And, I would return my phone calls, and I was still doing business, and I was still marketing my business. I do a lot of that on Facebook. It's the reason for all of the mindfulness posts and all of that. That's promoting, the group and everything. I was still doing my podcast, Monday at 11 on Facebook, if you're interested, The Presence Posse. But it was, I just was getting to the point where things were deeper and deeper. And the big thing that changes, the silence speaks right now. One of the things that I've always taught and always thought was that if we've got a voice going inside of our head, that's a false voice. That's our ego trying to protect the story of us and protecting, where are we going with this? What does this mean? Am I safe? Is this my fault? Those are questions that our critical mind is asking all the time. And wisdom, I think, whispers that what our feelings are actually telling us has nothing to do with our circumstances, but rather is a guide to let us know, how are we doing on the inside? How grounded are you in this moment? And an exercise that I lost in November, I know it and I teach it, but it wasn't available to me. And one of the things that happens is, as mental stress increases, our access to resources decreases. And so our feelings, I think, are very useful in telling us, they're like baby bumpers on the bowling alley, just keeping the ball rolling down the course. And whatever your trigger is, one of my triggers is customer service people who are not providing good customer service, because I used to run a big company and I knew how important that was. So I'm just like, if you worked for me, I'd fire you. And that used to be, still triggers me. But now it's like, okay, who's interested in this? Is it the divine I am? The one that is always connected, that can never be unconnected? We can only have clouds over the light that's shining on us all the time? Or is it the little egoic Bobby Cobb who has to be super good at everything and competitive and win and, blah, blah, blah? And that has been a very good pattern interrupt, but I lost it temporarily. And the pattern interrupt is it's an NLP term that just means, once you have these patterns going on, if you can interrupt them, then things will be, you've got now the opportunity, the space for new thinking to flow in. I'll tell you one, my girlfriend that I broke up with that I was mentioning earlier, one day I got up and she was already up, and she wore all of her emotions on her face. She always knew exactly how she was doing. And I saw a look on her that I had never seen before. And I'm like, what's wrong? And she said, I think I have deep vein thrombosis. And she is not a medical person. And I'm like, what? And I didn't even know what that was. And she goes, my knee's been bugging me, and I Googled it. Oh. And it says I might have deep vein thrombosis. And I'm like, I don't think you do, but you'll feel better if we go to the doctor. And I said, I'll go with you. And in that moment, I was pretty grounded. And, I'm just trying to keep her. I'm not giving her any advice. I'm letting her experience the feelings, and I'm just there to support her. We go back into the doctor's office, and she's freaking out, waiting for the doctor to come in. And I said, Sandy, go grab that box of latex gloves and stick it in your purse. And she's like, what? And I said, we need those. They got tons of them here. Let's just take them. And she's like, what? And sure, but now she's not, she's like, have you lost your friggin' mind? And so she's no longer worried about her deep vein thrombosis. And I just kept that ruse up until the doctor came in. And once the doctor came in, everything, and I just kind of look at her and go, probably don't want to take them. And she did laugh as well. So that's a pattern interrupt. And a pattern interrupt can be anything. Your emotions can be a pattern interrupt. When you're getting overwound up and overwrought, that can be just a clue to check in, do a little self-inquiry and go, how am I doing on the inside? Where am I? Just like if one is the Buddha, pure Zen, and 99 is I gotta run from the room and medicate or crawl up in a fetal position or do something and just let the storm blow over. Where am I on that scale right now? So I was doing that, and when Carla first left, I got to the point where I pulled out my phone. That's a technique that I teach, that set a timer, do the countdown, and I got down to 17 minutes. I needed to have that thing going off every 17 minutes to check in with myself. If I went longer than that, I was getting overwrought, and the mental static was coming back. So I would just kind of like breathe it down, breathe it down. One day, Richard's not here. I've told this story in his presence before, so he won't mind me sharing again. My blood pressure was kind of staying up. And the doctor said, you may want to think about some medication. I'm like, he's like, it's a silent killer. And so I'm kind of thinking about it. And I happened to talk to Richard, and I'm like, the doctor recommended that I get on blood pressure medication. And he's like, of course he did. That's all they ever think about. They want to treat the symptoms. And he was pretty emphatic about it. And I'm like, thank you, Richard. That's exactly what I needed to hear in this moment. And later that day, I'm talking to Carla. She's back in Dillingham now. And I'm talking to her, and I'm like, I'm not feeling good about taking this blood pressure medication, because people get on them and they can never get off. And she goes, don't you have a breathing technique for that? And I've got like a whole series of like breathing techniques. And I'm like, yeah, I do. But in the moment, I couldn't, I had that knowledge, I had that awareness, but I needed delivered wisdom from outside to kind of help me, take that. Or if you believe that we are all one, Richard was just a reflection of me telling me exactly what I needed to hear in exactly the right moment. Same with Carla. Boom, boom, boom. And one of the things that I have noticed in my 5 years prior to this and in my time since this is when we are quiet enough, those kind of things just seem to be happening a lot more often. And we're quiet enough that we can hear them. I had a client that asked me one time who was experiencing that phenomenon for the first time. And he says, he goes, I've been thinking about all of these coincidences. And he goes, I've been trying to figure out what's been going on. Why am I getting those? What kind of magic is happening here? And I had been telling him, there's no magic to it. It's just, you're more aware. You're present, you're grounded, you're centered, and your mind is quiet. And he said, yeah, he goes, I thought about, is it the law of attraction? Am I just vibrating at the right level? But you could hear from the way that he was saying it, that he wasn't buying into that philosophy. And his second one, everything happens for a reason and it serves me. And you could tell again, he didn't really think that. And then he says, or is this shit been happening all my life and I'm just now quiet enough to notice it for the first time. And I said, I don't know, which one do you think? And he goes, you know which one I think. And so, I'd gotten quiet enough to hear all of that stuff again. And the other thing that I've noticed is the communication of what I perceive as wisdom communicated. So Dawn was talking earlier about struggling with something, and she's like, this just doesn't flow. It shouldn't be this hard to do that. And we've all had that experience of, knowing when things line up for us and it's like, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby. We're in the zone right now. And there's other times when we're not there. And so lately, what seems to be happening is the communication it is a voice that I hear, but when I hear it, it's a word. Like, I picked Carla up and we were gonna go down to Girdwood with some friends of ours. And we have this group of friends, and there's one person in the group who I cannot stand. I think he is a horrible human being. He's mean, and I've told him that. One time I just got to the point where I said, you know what, you're a dick. And he bowed up, and I bowed up back. And we kind of went at it, and if he was a Facebook friend, block, delete, we're done. But he's not. And so I'm picking Carla up at the airport. We're all packed to go down to Girdwood and everything. And she texts and says, so-and-so's going to be there. Is that okay? And I said, no. And she types back, really? Because I'm normally not that emphatic about everything. And I said, no, it's not okay. And now she's like, oh, this is drama. I don't want drama. And I don't want drama either. That's why I said no. And she's like, turns out he's not going to be there till Sunday. We'll already be gone. I said, I'm just not interested. And like this signal that I was getting, and she was like, almost to the point of begging me, which is very unusual. She's like, I've never seen you like this. And I said, just every cell of my body is telling me not to be there. And so I'm sorry, I will drive you down and drop you off and come back and pick you up. I am happy to do that. I don't want to be there. And I don't want to have the confrontation, and I don't want to have the drama. So that was just like super, very, very emphatic. And she's looking at me like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just adamant. And she texts me like, she ended up going, she drove herself down. I stayed home. She texted me like 2 hours later, good call, he's here. And so, was that wisdom tapping into something? I have no idea, and I don't question it. It just is interesting. But now the guidance of the silence is a lot more emphatic. So, in my couple of remaining minutes, if you're interested in exploring this on your own, I've got like 6 steps of how to get here and how to quiet your mind and how to do all of this stuff if you're interested in doing it. One is have some sort of mindful practice in your life which can calm you down. It can be breathing. Pranayama is a wonderful tool. It takes virtually no training. You can just start deepening your breath if you meditate. That's a great one. But having some sort of ability to, when you feel yourself amping up, that you can say, okay, I'm losing it here. What do I need to do to calm down? And the breath is beautiful. And I've got videos on in my group that you can see it on YouTube. The breathing's, it's so quick and it's so effortless. Oh, and my blood pressure now? Well, actually, it was fine until I went to my last. I'm in the middle of protocols right now of 6. I have 6 treatments. I've done 4 of them. And they've been not, they're a little painful in their pain. And so I went in last time and she goes, oh, your blood pressure is real elevated. And I'm like, what is it? And she's like, 154 over 95. And I'm like, that's not good. And I said, okay. And I noticed that I had, for a while, I have a cuff and I was taking it every day and several times every day. And I would just breathe it down and breathe it down and breathe it down. And I would just keep breathing and doing these exercises until I got it down, 120, 80-ish. And, it's amazing how connected we are as an organism. So having some sort of mindful practice, I'm sure everybody does. It could be contemplative prayer, listening to music, going for a walk, whatever. The second thing, and this is what I really lost, and it took me a while to get it back again, even though I teach it all the time, taught it to several people in this room, just having an interrupt where you're checking into yourself and seeing how you're doing. And if you don't like where it is, addressing it. And ultimately doing that, what happens is you have a shift, like a transformative paradigm shift, where, the phrase, it's overused, but I still love it. That we're not human beings having occasional spiritual experiences, rather we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So you make a shift where that becomes your embodied lived reality, and awesome experiences aren't something that happen every once in a while. Almost every experience can become awesome experiences. And then suddenly those emotions, anxiety or anger or those things, those now become the pattern interrupts. And that kind of happens automatically. But we have years of conditioning that started when we were 2. As soon as we could talk, the conditioning started, and it's been happening up until today. So you have to overcome that a little bit. So check-in is number 2. The easiest one is just your cell phone, putting a countdown timer on there, start at 45 minutes and see how you're doing. If you're doing fine at 45 minutes, go to 60. And if you're doing good at 60, go to 90. And if you're not, I told you I got down to 17 minutes. I had to have an alarm going off every 17 minutes. And it was at that level when I had it at 22 before, which was my previous low when I used the tool, and I don't use it every day. It's something that most people, if you use it for 90 days, 40 days, you got it. And many people, it's quicker than that. So the third is understanding what our feelings are telling us. And just getting into the habit of questioning, and the default, the conditioning is our feelings are telling us about our circumstances. And you can test this with a friend. See somebody who looks really up or really down, and just say, hey, comment on that. You look super happy today. What's going on? Almost always, the response is going to be something external. I just got a windfall. My boss got fired. I met the one. It's going to be something like that. Or on the opposite side, my boss is a jerk. My boyfriend I just found out is cheating on me. Whatever. It's all external. That's the conditioning. That's not the truth. The truth is, that's guidance. That's your inner guru speaking to you, giving you a report. Non-judgmentally, it's like the gas gauge in your car. You're just you're looking and checking in and say, okay, I got a half a tank going up to Adam and back today. That's plenty of gas. Don't need to do anything. But there's times when that light comes on that says, you need fuel, baby. And just paying attention to the gauges, to the wisdom that is being delivered to us. And that shift is going to happen where and recognize that we are whole. We are the divine I am. That is part of who we are, but it's part of the whole. And the personality, the constructed identity that we so carefully do, that's part of who we are too, but those are two different perspectives. And once you get into the habit of doing that, which I'm actually curious if I'll ever have to get knocked out of it again, but to the people who did the, do you still think that life is happening divinely? I didn't in the moment, but it took me, I guess, a couple of months to look back and go, you know what, this sucks and I don't like it, but it's a gift. And not a gift because I learned something. It's a gift because it reminded me that our bodies are temporary. They change, they're changing. We've taken in 7.5 billion new blood cells our body has made while we've been sitting here. It does that every hour. 7.5 billion. And I don't know how much oxygen we've taken in and blown out, but we're much more of a process than we are a thing. It looks like it's a thing, but you can see. I had another experience shortly after the meditation. When I left Sandy, I went to live with my brother for a while I was figuring out what I was going to do, and he had to rush me to the hospital one time because I had internal bleeding that was undiagnosed and I didn't know was a problem. And I was non-responsive. I wasn't in a coma. I was awake and I was blinking and I was looking at people, but they would talk to me and I felt like I was talking to them. And but my brother assures me, no, you didn't say anything for like a day and a half. And I was totally aware of everything that was going on. And what I saw in that experience was just the sense that the body's not going to be here forever. But who we are, our divinity, our divine I am, it's got nowhere to go. Both my parents are dead and I hear them all the time. They're still talking to me. So, just recognizing, okay, is what I'm saying and what I'm doing and what I'm feeling, is it in service to the divine I am, or is it in service to the egoic mini-me that, I'm so worried won't be loved? So if you're interested in exploring those, there will be 3 ways to do it. One is I'm recording an audiobook. Anybody that's interested in it, I'm happy to share it with you. Question?
No, when you're done, I have 4 comments.
Okay. I'm almost done, so buckle up.
You ready to go?
I'm doing an audiobook. If you'd like to listen to it, it's half conceptual stuff for the mind, like what this has been. It'll be kind of along these lines, and it's half guided visualization where you're being led into it experientially. I've only done a couple of chapters so far, but if you're interested in it, I'm happy to do that. And I would very much love to do that, offer that as a gift, and get whatever feedback that you think is, if there's parts that didn't really make any sense, or wow, that really hit me strongly, or anywhere in between, that would be good. I am going to do, I don't know what the timing is yet. I was planning on doing it last fall, a Mindful Monday meditation. That'll be a class I'm going to offer to the public at one price and add them to a different price, and I'll offer it on a sliding scale. If you're interested in that, keep checking the emails, and when that comes, that may not be till fall. I haven't decided that yet, but we'll kind of see. And third thing is, if you would like to have some guided, deep hypnotic experiences focused specifically on this, then let me know and we can talk about that as well. So, an interesting thing happened yesterday. So an old girlfriend that I've always thought that we were very close, even though we broke up. We were together at a point where I was not interested in a long-term relationship because I had just gotten out of one, and I don't like to jump from one to another. And so, we were really connected, and we were very deep and everything. But she was like, "Where's this going? Where's this going?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I like now. Can we keep it here?" And she's like, "No, I need a commitment. I'm getting old. I'm blah, blah, blah. I got to figure this out. I don't want to die alone." And so yesterday, we're still friends on Facebook. I've actually, like 2 or 3 times, she's called me up and I said, "I need an independent," because she's like, I don't know if my crazy is showing. And so we'll just talk, and I've been like a relationship coach for her. And I saw something that I knew she would be interested in, and I went to tag her. You know how you can do that on a post? You can just type in so-and-so's name, and they'll show up, and that'll alert them to come and take a look at this post that may be of interest. And her name wasn't coming up. And I'm like, that's weird. So I go and search her, and I type in the name, and her name comes up, but it's just like a search engine type name. And I pluck it, and it comes up, and I see her there. They're like, "Here's this person, 18 friends in common," or whatever the number is. And I click on her profile, and it says, "Add as a friend."
You were unfriended.
She unfriended me. And I was kind of surprised, and I was worried that maybe in all of this shitstorm in my head that I've been going through, if I have said some offensive things to, and my political posts, a lot of people they don't really like. And so I just texted her, "Hey, I noticed that you said you unfriended me on Facebook. Did I offend?" And she wrote back and she said, and "It's been a little while since we've been together, and we both have been in many other relationships since then." And she goes, "No, I'm just moving on. I need more compassionate people in my life." And I read that, and my initial reaction was, "You need compassionate people. I'm the one going through active cancer protocols." And that flashed for a second. I'm like, this isn't about that at all. And I just wrote back, "Okay, good luck." And I just immediately recognized she's going through some stuff right now, and something about me triggered something in her, and and she did say, "No, you didn't offend, I'm just moving on."
So let's hope all the people you unfriended feel the same way.
Whoa!
That would be good.
First thing is probably need to find a way to vent your stress. Like the difference between the guy driving in traffic and the guy with road rage is, the guy with the road rage has let his stress build up with no vent for it, and that's why it's there. So
Hence the pattern interrupt. Yeah, absolutely.
Second thing is there's this book that says a whack on the side of the head, and it's basically what you're talking about, a pattern interrupt, and you need somebody to come by and whack you upside the head once in a while. Not physically, but just to realign your thinking. Third is when you're talking about the mountain, it seems like there's a fine line between a mystical experience and hypoxia. So maybe you can accelerate the thing with a plastic bag set. Just make sure it's a close fit. And the last thing is, you could have really benefited with my meditation.
So I've got one. You mentioned something that I took a mental note of, and I didn't get the last part right, but you said, as our mental stress increases, our internal resources decrease?
No, our access.
Our access to internal or just to resources?
Well, yeah, it's all internal. I mean, your resources are all internal, even if, you could say a car is a resource. But yeah, our ability, like in a different mental state yesterday, I easily could have just reacted, and that could have ruined my day, could have ruined one's day. But I'm down, and I just very quickly realized, the moment that I said, you need more compassionate people. And, I'm like, I got a ton of compassionate people in my life. I have no shortage of compassionate people. And just, sending her on her way and recognizing so the resources are always there. We couldn't lose them. We have innate resilience, innate creativity, innate
But they're clouded by our...
They can be, yeah, they can be. And so it's important to recognize just where are you? How cloudy is your day on the inside? And to the degree that you can get very much in tune with that and in harmony with that, then you can go back to the mindfulness exercise and finding some way to relieve that and just stay
divine.
Yeah.
Just stay divine.
Yeah,
You know,
divine.
forget about identifications, forget about go to, have a little faith in your own introspection and the fact that deviating from your divine leads you on a path to God knows where.
Exactly.
And it happens to all of us all the time, and having the blessing to have the chance
Yeah.
to have a little blood in your urine, to come to a place that quiets you, whether, to take a breath and have, just remember your own divinity. And it doesn't, like you just said, you're still talking with your ancestors, with your mother and your father every day. You don't need this body. You are in need. You need nothing.
Amen, brother.
Okay, guys, let's give Bobby a hand because we got to set up for